Right, full council meeting. Welcome to the people in the gallery up there, people online watching. Can I first of all say, do the usual fire drill bits. In the event of a fire, and we're not expecting a fire drill tonight, please use the stairs to go straight down to the bottom out of the doors, and we assemble in front of the police station across the road. Please don't use the lifts unless absolutely necessary. And we have members of staff here who will come and help if necessary. If you've got a mobile phone, just better check mine, please turn them off or put them on to silent now. This one's mine. I stole somebody else's earlier. I shan't say who. Yeah, so that's the first thing. We shall go to the agenda. So minutes of the oh, sorry, yes, I need to do apologies first. The wrong bit. Apologies, any apologies, please? Yep. So we have apologies from Councillor Critchison, Councillor Ian Daw, Councillor Stephen Hendry, Laura P.C. Wilcox, Sarah Rudrup and Joe Robinson. Are there any more? And John Medland has been just added. Yeah, I got Councillor Stephen Hendry. Yep, that's okay.
Councillor Ray Redrup is going to try and get here, but he may be late.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Anything else? Okay. Now we'll go to the minutes. Okay. Everybody happy with the minutes? No amendments? That's fine with that. Okay, very good. Can we have a show of hands to support? Oh, sorry, I need a seconder, don't I? Councillor Lilly. And everybody in favour of those minutes? Very good. Thank you. Carried. Sign which page? There's quite a few pages. Yeah. Okay, do we have any declarations of interests? Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Just in relation to my motion that I am involved in running a family business. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Mosdale. Yes. Yes, I run a small business as well. Everybody's declaring that they run a small business. Yeah, okay. As long as we bear that in mind. Okay, thank you.
Pecuniary interest again, Councillor Price's motion, but not because I run a small business, but because I'm an active member of Isle of Wight Chamber of Commerce, Federation of Small Businesses and Newport Business Association.
Right. What are your intentions then in that? Are you going to remain?
They're non-pecuniary.
Thank you, just clarifying that. Okay, and then we go to public question time. So we're going to take the written questions first. And we have a question from Mrs. Elliott. Miss Elliott not here. What we'll just do is we'll just read the question bit out and then we'll give a written response to that.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just read the heart of the question following the request. The question itself is, may I request for health and safety reasons that Island Roads put up signs to inform the public of areas that have been sprayed. Their fact sheet clearly recommends that, quote, pets are not allowed to come into contact with freshly sprayed weeds until such time as the spray has dried, close quote. Information about sprayed areas is needed in order to make an informed choice. That's the body of the question, Chair.
Thank you very much. And we go across to Councillor Jordan for a response to that.
Thank you, Chair. I just point out, I will give you a short answer. I just point out this was an amended question after the member of the public asked a question and received an answer previously. This was a second question or amended question that you've just heard. And the weed treatment throughout the year is a process that is carried out very efficiently, completing around 40 to 50 kilometres of weed treatment length every day. This is carried out where needed on public roads, but is also generally in clustered spots where weeds have returned in the growing season. The process itself sees a reasonably quick drying time. And as the correspondent, the resident, points out, there is only a recommendation regarding animals when the weed spray is wet. For this reason, in that the potential problem areas are small but short-lived, and the distances that would require signing and recovery of signs after such a short period is a little impractical. Island Roads, however, are appreciative of the point raised and believe that further details within the communication processes ahead of works would be a valuable addition for residents and pet owners. So in future, there will be more detailed social media information and the details on the websites, which will be able to raise awareness and provide some reassurance for residents. That's the answer, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jordan. We have a second written question from Cooper Woodford of our Youth Council, and you are very welcome.
Thank you, Chair. We have a question from the Youth Council. The question is, given that bus fares have risen to £3 and the financial impact on the families and students themselves will be worsened by this, a round trip from home to school now can cost as much as £12 in a week. That's £60 in a month. That's £60 in a month. That's, yeah. For a young person, this is a considerable amount of money. So will the council consider introducing a discounted or subsidised bus pass for students and apprentices in order to relieve the financial burden? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cooper. Very well read. Nice to see our Youth Council engaged here, and thank you for your question. And again, we go across to Councillor Jordan. Oh, sorry, Jonathan Baker's going to respond to this one, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. And indeed, yes, thank you for coming along this evening and representing the Youth Council at our meeting this evening. The response is as follows. It is correct that national bus fares have been capped at £3 from January 2025 to December 2025, and the current £2 cap will run out on the 31st of December this year. At this time, there is no internal or external funding available for the Isle of Wight Council to utilise for subsidising local bus fares following the government's decision to amend the current fare cap. I am sure it is appreciated that the Isle of Wight, like many other local authority areas, is continuing to face budgetary pressures and meeting these through further planned savings over the coming years. However, following the recent announcement from government over the weekend regarding funding for local bus services, which specifically referenced the Isle of Wight, the council is set to receive additional funding from government of around 1.8 million, which can be spent on capital and revenue projects. Working with the bus provider, Southern Vectis, and through the Bus Services Improvement Plan arrangement, which is already in place, we will be looking to improve the overall bus services island-wide with potential enhancements to include more service routes, increased frequency along some routes, real-time information provision, and consideration of further subsidies where they may be best utilised. In the coming weeks and months, we shall be working on the improvement plan and intend to bring a paper to Cabinet around January next year for consideration of implementing such improvements across the island.
So thank you, Councillor Jordan. Could we supply the Youth Council with a copy of that, please, when you've, thank you very much. It'll be emailed over to you tomorrow so that you've got a copy of that. And thank you for that question. Now, we don't have any registered questions from the gallery. Do you have any questions? Just briefly, we shouldn't technically take them unless you register them, but if you've got a brief question, I can give ground. If you could say your name, please.
Stephen Maskell.
You're welcome, Stephen.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Maskell. I'm 40 years old. Back in July this year, I was going to take my own life, as everything seemed too much. I was too embarrassed to ask for help. I was ashamed to tell my family. I felt I had let my partner and kids down. As life was getting too much, it really started to show. My body would swell up everywhere. I was having panic attacks and really not having any sleep at all. My family and friends could see I wasn't myself. My partner decided enough was enough. She sat me down and explained that help is out there and that I'm not alone. My partner suggested that I should talk to professional persons and make an appointment with a counsellor. So I decided to face my demons, and now, in 4 months since I made that call to my counsellor, and I can now proudly say that is one of the most important calls of my life. Since I have tackled my demons, I am recovering. I wish now to help others through raising awareness. Will you please, as a council, give full consideration to Councillor Blake's motion on tackling issues around men's mental health? It is a very important matter to the people you represent. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And as you've said, the item is on the agenda and will be fully discussed by members. Thank you for that. Doesn't seem as though we've got any more questions, so that's the end of that particular section. Thank you very much for your questions. So that brings me on to Chairman's announcements. You've all had my report in your packs, and I particularly want to thank all of those people who have been involved with Armistice Day and organising events right across this island, which many of you will have attended in your various different wards. I think it's really important to remember many of those stories, which are important not to be lost, as we are all growing older, aren't we? And those memories are fading in some people's minds. I just have one other amendment that I want to just bring to all councils' attention. So we are now, this is the fourth full council meeting before the end of this term. So there are 3 more left after tonight's meeting, one of which is heavily dedicated to the budget. So I am trying to say to you, particularly to the committee chairs, scrutinies, etc., that in actual fact, any work that needs to be brought together before the end of this term needs to be thought about carefully, particularly in your own agendas, task and finish groups, etc. And the reason that I'm saying this is because obviously we are moving from one system to a new system. And what I don't want is for things to be lost in terms of the council business. Okay, it's really important. So can we think carefully, please, about the remaining 3 meetings that we've got and what motions you want to bring forward and what is going on the agenda? Bearing in mind that I believe, and I might be wrong in this, there's still quite a lot of discussion to go on about the new committee system, and there may be things that need to come here that have priority in order to ensure that the smooth transition occurs. And that's the only thing that I'm saying to you. So if you've got task and finish groups, if it's possible to bring them to a close or a completion, I should say, then please do so, because in the new system, when we transfer, they may be lost in the setup of the new organisation to start with. And that's my only plea to you in terms of how we manage this council. Okay. We will move on. We share this meeting, by the way, it's Transgender Awareness Day. And of course, the next meeting that is, the next awareness day that is relevant to me, personally to me, and you will have your own days, it's called World AIDS Day, which is on the 1st of December coming forward. And this is our last meeting, of course, before Christmas as well. So that's the end of my little bit of spiel there. And thank you to all of you, to all of the officers and everybody involved in compiling the agendas for these meetings and being part of this council. Does anybody have any questions about that at all? No? That's even better. So now we move on to the leaders' report.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as always, the report is in front of you in the papers. I won't take any of your time in reading any of it to you. You have had an opportunity to do so. I'm happy to take questions. What I just add, if I may, at this moment in time, this is coming later in terms of a motion and will be debated. But I'd just like to say at this stage, I'm grateful to Cllr Blake for submitting his motion on mental health, and agree that as a local authority, we do have a crucial role to play in improving the mental health of everyone. So members will or should recall that this administration's 24-25 budget, this council's 24-25 budget set on February last year, we create a community capacity and resilient fund. And that was established to recognise at the time the unknowns of the Housing Support Fund, the HSF Housing Support Fund. And also to aid as grant funding to organisations in support of vulnerable households and community groups. So community-based support projects that provide wider support linked to the island's poverty reduction strategy objectives. For example, acknowledging that there are wider detriments to the causes of poverty in terms of both mental and physical well-being will need to be explored, looking at all the means and opportunities available to do so, working in partnership to enable appropriate means and responses to address poverty and its impacts and health and well-being. So it's an application-based process. This is the point. It's an application-based process available this year for local initiatives where community and voluntary groups, along with the town, parish and community councils, can apply for funding to support their community with essential support that may otherwise not be available. So full details, the application process, criteria are on the council website. We welcome applications for funding from that grant funding. The point is, it's a resource, as we discuss a little later, I'm sure, a resource for mental health issues on this island. So I'm just adding that to my leader's report as it's appropriate, I think, at this moment. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
And over to you, councillors. We're looking for hands. Councillor Brading.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Jordan, just to prove that I do actually read your reports with interest, I'm querying the last part of paragraph 3 on page 1, where you state that following the consultation on schools that ended on 1st November, Cabinet will make its decision on the 12th of September. I assume you mean 12th of December, and it's not already a done deal. So should that be December and not September?
Thank you for picking up on that, Councillor Brading. Absolutely right, and thank you for that correction and clarification. And yes, good points for reading it all. Thank you.
Indicating at this time. Councillor Lillick.
Councillor Jordan, thank you for actually raising about mental health grants. As you know, I've been very concerned. I was overjoyed that Public Health puts 50,000 a year over 2 years from, I think, the new term from 2021. And those grants went to 28 projects across that, including into places like Ventnor, Wellbeing, and to men only, and actually went into men's mental health and support. I was very disturbed that then that grant fund ended, right? And I have been writing to find an explanations of this. Are you saying that specifically that the grant fund that you've actually announced, because I know that there are issues or conditions with the home support fund, so is that grant fund be eligible for projects that actually support peer-to-peer groups such as men only, such as the Ventnor Wellbeing Cafe? Because I would like that specifically minuted if that is the case. Because when I've looked at the grant fund, that
We've
doesn't
heard the
appear
question. Thank you, councillor. We've heard the question. We now need to have a response.
Just a clarification, point of order. No disrespect to the question at all, but questions have to be on what's
The
contained
agenda.
in the report of the leader.
Yeah.
Not anything else. I've been stopped from asking questions that weren't in the past. Are we now allowing questions on other issues? Thank you.
But he verbally said
Okay.
it, councillor
Okay.
Brown.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I hear. Yeah, no, I take the point that you make, and you're right, it's not in the written report. Yes,
I'm happy to solve this issue by saying, councillor Lee, they are.
thank you very much. We've answered that question. Any more questions? I don't see any more indications at this point. No, gone. Report of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Coastal Protection and Flooding is next on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Before members of the full council tonight is my report and the report of the Natural Landscapes team on the AONB management plan. First of all, I wish to make an apology because there is a bit of a patchwork of mentions of the AONB, which is still the legislative function of the plan that we are making, the management plan. We have to create a AONB management plan. However, across the country, most AONBs are now called national landscapes. So just that rider there. It is indicated on paragraph 2 of the report that I'm presenting. Members will be aware there has been quite a lot of consultation with the AONB plan. I think one of the things we all have to remember is the AONB that we have on the island, although it is natural and it is beautiful, it is something in a lot of areas that have been shaped by man. And I think that is something well worth remembering. And I think the economy of the AONB is something that is really important and it needs to be further sustained. This AONB plan gets released every 5 years. And I'm not going to say anything more. We all know what the natural landscape is, or the AONB in old money. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take that. But I hope to find support with this paper. And I'll look for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconded. Yeah. Would you like to speak on that?
I think Councillor Fuller speaks eloquently without me.
Questions? Look straight forward and see Councillor Jarman with his hand in the air.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as Councillor Brading was astute enough to notice the first issue that I had on my list this evening, I feel bound to do the second one, just to prove that I actually read the papers as well. Can I refer you to the title of the document, which says Isle of Wight Natural Landscapes?
I'm aware of that. Yes, it should be national landscapes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I I attempted to read all 165 pages of it, and I tried to compare it with the old plan, and it's virtually impossible. So I'm going to ask, is there any chance that we could have a presentation on what the changes are from the old plan to the new plan? That's the question. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see why there shouldn't be a presentation, if you'd like a presentation on that. Okay, so if we could ask that to be done by the officers, and they'll come back and email you all about that, okay? Any other questions on the document itself that's been presented? Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Fuller, for presenting this this document. I haven't had a chance to read all of it, but I would like to just ask about two things. The priorities for delivery, so it's page 90 on our papers, but I think page 60 of the actual document itself talks about working with communities involved in green towns or neighbourhood plans. Do you think, say it's a priority for delivery, but do you think that could be expanded maybe to all town and parish and community councils across the Isle of Wight? Because I don't think there's probably not many that don't touch upon this area of work. So that's one question. I know you're very good at working with IWOC and other the main body that represents town and parish councils on the island. And secondly was the really interesting to read about the butterfly species that have been lost from the island, whereas our island status can protect us, so we still have the dormouse and red squirrel, but the butterflies apparently won't get reintroduced without human intervention. Do you think that's something that might happen like they've done with the old beaver?
Thank you for raising the beavers. Yes, there are works currently underway concerning the butterflies and the blue butterflies that we have on our chalk downland. Very important. And we've received government funding, as I understand, to be able to enhance that. So yes, there is quite a lot of work that is going on. The AONB, the Natural Landscape team do a fantastic job. But there are a lot of projects that we receive DEFRA funding from, and this is one of the areas that is seen as a priority because our species of butterflies is in decline in many parts. So yes, thank you for that, and I hope that work will continue. Thank you.
Yes,
and secondly,
no, sorry, Paul, can I stop you a second? Sorry, it's a debate, and you should be answering the questions in the right to reply at the end. My apologies about that. So,
sorry.
So thank you for that. That's we'll give you the opportunity to sum up at the end. Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. This is a fairly general question which may take some thought, but throughout this document, and indeed throughout all the documents which it refers to, we continue to quote European legislation and European community directives. And I wondered whether any thought had been given to updating that with the current UK directives following the changes in statute, which are either grandfathered in or not European directives into the UK legislative.
Thank you again. Remember, we're debating here, so questions can be responded to later. Okay. Anybody else? In which case we go back to Paul, Councillor, so that you can respond.
Thank you for the questions. Yes, working with town and parish councils is key, and yes, many of the councils, I don't know very many that don't have a bit of their patch in the AONB. I think there may be about 6 or 7 town and parish councils that aren't included. Just to let you know, Councillor Jones-Evans, we do have a representative from IWOC that sits on the Natural Landscapes Partnership, and they give quite a lot of input. It was previously the lovely Councillor Stewart who was the representative from IWOC, but we now have another member. I think it's Councillor Cowley, currently from Shalfleet. So he is the representative currently on IWILC, as I understand. With respect to the new UK directives, I think Councillor Jarman's made a very valid point. One of the hurdles that this plan has had to go through to get to this stage is that we've had to go through Natural England, and Natural England are very happy with what we have highlighted. Again, it is a working document, and it is a working document, and within that working document, there is the ability to change any legislation that may alter in the coming years. But at the moment, we are using a lot of the European designations, which are still in operation that we use, and that is quite important within particularly our maritime environment as well. So yes, there are legislations coming across, whether it's from Europe or whether it's from the UK. It needs to be there to be able to protect our AONB, so national landscapes. Again, I've been involved with the natural landscapes AONB for a very long time. It's very, very hard lesson to change. But yes, that is all in hand at the moment. So thank you for that, Councillor Jarman.
So would you like to read the recommendation?
I most certainly can, and apologies. Yeah, the recommendation is that the full council approves the Isle of Wight management plan as attached to Appendix 1, and the delegated authority be granted subject to the Isle of Wight national landscapes. I'm getting confused now. National Landscapes Manager and the Isle of Wight National Landscapes Chairman, in consultation with Strategic Manager of Planning and Infrastructure and the Cabinet Member for Planning, Coastal Protection and Flooding, to make minor grammatical or typographical amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been read out and seconded. So those in favour? It looks like it's unanimous. Just give the opportunity. Any abstentions? Anybody against? No, thank you. That's carried. So then we move on to the report of the Cabinet Member for Housing and Finance, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 7A. New Hemble, page 189. Going in as we did last year with after our consultation, island-wide consultation. Just like to use my sheet here. Recommendations to full council are to adopt the proposed scheme for 25-26, keeping the scheme predominantly the same, apart from a few minor simplifications and amendments, and to continue the exceptional hardship policy. You'll find more on that on page 194 if you want to look, which actually gives a list of what there is in the way of the minor amendments. Over the last few years, the maximum level of local council tax support has reduced gradually from 100% to 65% in 2022 for working age claimants. In 2023 and 24, full council increased the maximum level of support by 5% each year, which currently stands at 75%. Looking at next year, there are existing financial pressures on the council, as well as forecast demand pressures which need to be addressed within the council's budget. It's likely that council savings requirements will need to rise from 1 million to 3 as a result of unfunded cost pressures in social care. We also have to recognise the need for residents to have financial stability during these difficult times with the cost of living
crisis energy price increases and more residents being moved onto universal credit from existing benefits. So we've consulted on the proposed scheme over an 8-week period, as I said, island-wide throughout the summer. This consultation also sought news of town, parish and community councils, and the majority agreed that the proposed scheme should be the option adopted. And if you look at page 215, I'm not going to go and read the body of the report. I take it that you've all read it. Therefore, there are the responses to consultation and also a response from the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service and indeed the Police and Crime Commissioner. As you know, that the resultant decrease or increase in any council tax support affects the precepts on those as well. The only cost to the proposed scheme is 38,000 increase for one of the simplification amendments to be made. And you'll find that that is to encompass even more, if you like, people just outside of the area of claiming at this moment in time. There's been no increase in the amount of funding the Isle of Wight Council receives to provide this support, and the amount is enough to cover the pension age scheme, which is set by government. And as you know from last year's debate, that cannot be altered. The current scheme, the current cost of the scheme is 11.4 million. And you'll, as I say, you'll understand that cost pressures there. That money doesn't go out, but the benefits and the council tax is amended so that money isn't paid into the council. We just write that on the balance. But I know I've got two ladies behind me here, which is absolutely fantastic. They turned out last week and did an informal briefing to members, and I take it that most members across the chamber availed themselves to either being present on that little bit of informal training or information session. It was their open forum, and it's meant to be an open forum whereby the politics are kicked aside and the actual discussion is around what we can do and how we can do it. And if suggestions come forward as to why we want to do a certain thing, there are other elements that are saying, hold on, let's get this balance right. Because at this moment in time, as you know, the Isle of Wight Council is hard pressed with its finances. What I want to say is we've got to assist. Okay, I'll leave it there. But I think that you've got the body of the report. You've had an opportunity last week to speak with the officers. Thank you very much indeed. Had the opportunity to speak to me as well if you needed. No one approached me. I believe someone did approach.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stevens. Thank you. Can I look for a seconder for that? Seconder, Councillor Andre. Would you like to speak on that?
I do just have a question, if I may, Chair, to Councillor Stevens.
It's a debate. We don't do questions. You can ask a question which you can answer at the end.
Yes, that's fine. And I won't reserve the right to speak later. In terms of the exceptional hardship policy, we have allocated a sum aside, but is it not fair to say that if somebody satisfies the criteria, the money will be made available?
Thank you for the question.
Yes.
We'll pick that up in the summing up, please. Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check within the body of the document, it covers a number of benefits which are excluded from the calculations. I think we'll all be aware of the 1.3 billion of cuts recently introduced by the government to the winter fuel payments, which affects 9.4 million pensioners, 10 million people in total, 83% of which are over 80 and 71% are pensioners with disabilities. And I would like to know if the winter fuel payments will continue to be excluded from the calculations for this benefit. Thank you.
Again, that's a question that can be picked up by Councillor Stevens towards the end. Councillor Musdale.
Thank you, and thank you for the paper. We did have this paper at corporate scrutiny, and one of the officers came and explained, and we got to ask lots of questions at corporate scrutiny. So hence why most members of corporate scrutiny weren't at the meeting saying about it, because we had asked our questions there. One of the things that was highlighted in corporate scrutiny, though, was this is a very long paper that is actually not that simple to understand. And thank you for officers putting a session to actually explain this paper. But our point from corporate scrutiny is this is a paper that the public can read and the public should be able to understand. How can we in future ensure that papers such as this are actually more user friendly, and because they don't have the benefit of actually being able to have a special session to understand the paper, just explains how complicated it is. And I also have a point that we've been quoted a figure, I think it was 11.4 million that we have in a fund for this. But actually the jungle drums from government are saying at the moment that council tax will have a huge hike, that the average council tax bill is likely to go up to £3,000 a year. As we know, when government directs us to do things, that we need to take into account what they're asking of us. How much will that fund have to move to if we do have to really, as you can imagine, a percentage of something when you're actually getting a bigger bill is not such a good percentage. You have to find the rest of that money, don't you? So what have we put in our calculations for that to be answered, please?
Thank you very much for that. And you're right, it is quite a complex paper, and I think that point is acknowledged. Is next Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. On this council, I've always paid very close attention to the level of support given to low-income working families, and it has been very good to see that we have made very good progress to restore the amount of support from 65% up towards 80%, which is when I joined this council some almost eight years ago. In many senses, this is a sad moment in that we have not got back to 80%, which is where I believe we really need to be. I understand because of the nature of the consultation, no amendment can be brought forward tonight to achieve that. But I'm looking ahead to the next council. For those of us who are seeking re-election and are returned next year, and those who may be looking to be elected to this council, I hope amongst them all of us, we will be committing to finding a way to return to an 80% support scheme. There are a number of significant challenges coming up as the government's budget is almost certainly going to lead to people losing their jobs and seeking support from this council for its council tax. The nature of the way in which passporting benefits are leaving, and we've got universal credit comes in, complicates that situation. I was on holiday for the period that the members' briefing happened, but sadly for me, or happily in one way, I was still consumed by the thought of the local council tax support scheme, and did stay up one night in 8 hours in advance of this country to read it all the way through. Two things struck me. One, it is immensely complicated, and Councillor Mosdale is absolutely right to point that out. I found it really difficult to understand, and it amazes me that it is properly translated into a scheme that can be implemented. Second one, I do feel actually those on the 75% band are actually proportionately not as well served as those who are earning a little bit more in the other bands, and that needs to be looked at through the data there. We do. I saw clarification from the Section 151 officer. We do definitely uprate with the rate of inflation. There's paragraph 6 on page 85 refers to that, and that's going to be very important that we continue to do that. But above all, we need to be finding ways to marry this with something else that is very important that has happened in the last few weeks, which is the emergence at last of a poverty reduction strategy. All of this comes together, and I commend the words that the leader of the council spoke about earlier around the actions taken by this council for resilience of our communities.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. One thing that came from the members' briefing was that the consultation has to take into account any changes this council wishes to make to the support scheme. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Jordan, but you eventually the answer to your question at the end was that includes in the budget setting as well, that the consultation has to consult on any possible changes. So can we just take a learning point that if this council was to want to change where the level is set at, that we would have to have that publicly consulted first, and if it is on this occasion, we would have to then go back to a public consultation, which would then have a cost that would be otherwise negated by simply adding more points into the consultation initially. And that, I'm sure that's a situation that's possibly repeated across other decisions this council may wish to take. So can we just take that learning point that the consultation, even if it was to make it better or rather more money be given to the residents, we'd have to consult them on that. So can we just take that learning point to give this council more flexibility without incurring unnecessary costs?
Thank you for that comment, Councillor Blake. Got anybody else? I know you indicated that we're only allowed to have one question. We are in a debate, but it's only one. I understand that it's only one. Just a second.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the rules of debate indicate that when a member may speak again, and those are limited occasions, further speaking once on an amendment moved by another member, move a further amendment motion to be amended since the last spoke, speak on the main issue when the first speech was moved on amendment, in exercise right of reply on a point of order or by way of personal explanation, none of which applies. So once you've spoken for your allocated time, that is normally it, except for obviously movers of the motion or at the end.
We got a point of order.
Yes, I think that's entirely inaccurate. I think I'm a bit worried that you've introduced a new process into our way we debate things. Questions are not contributions to the debate. Questions can aid debate, and questions should be answered at the time they're made. They should not be counted as a contribution to the debate. I mean, this is a massive paper, what, 100 and odd pages, nearly 200 pages, probably more. And there are bound to be questions about it that may help somebody formulate in their mind what they want to say about the paper. Yeah. Now, I think Mr. Potter's interpretation is inaccurate, actually. I think I should be able to ask 100 questions if you allow me as chair. If I should have 100 doubts about the paper, but I should still then be able to make a contribution. I think that's the correct interpretation of the Constitution. It always has been in all my time on this council, which I say repeatedly these days. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. It's not quite how I've always interpreted it. I've interpreted that I could ask one question and add my 3 minutes, and then everybody else is allowed time. If there is time, then I think it's fine to ask an additional questions. So in this particular case, I'm quite happy for you to take that. And I'm happy to have a conversation with Councillor Brody afterwards, just to get that more clear in my mind and the monitoring officer.
So this is a point of clarification, which I would like to explore. That previously there is a couple of issues to do with the Ukrainian refugees, which we have dealt with under this topic. I'm not in receipt of council tax relief in any way, so I don't believe I have pecuniary interest in it, but I am currently sponsoring as host my 5th Ukrainian family, mother and baby, to come to the UK and look after them. But the issue really is clarification about whether we are continuing here to exclude the payments which are given to hosts who are looking after Ukrainian families, on the one hand, of which I am a pecuniary interest because I do receive that, but I don't get the council tax benefits. I don't know whether that excludes me or not. Perhaps the monitoring officer will clarify that issue. But certainly we also have relief for Ukrainians where we provide a substantial relief for them once they move into their own properties. And I couldn't find any mention of the Ukrainian issue within the paper. I may be wrong because it is a very big paper, although I have read it quite carefully. And I think we should have clarification on those points so that they're not omitted going forwards.
Thank you very much for that. So we're going to go back to Councillor Stevens. Can you answer some of those questions and clarify those things?
Have a go.
Can you sum it up?
What I would say is let's just touch on what Councillor Jarman said, that yeah, all the monies that received through for assisting our Ukrainian friends is excluded from our totals that we put forward, and government cuts on the, until we know fully what the government cuts are. I understand what you're saying about fuel prices, etc. That's out of the control of this council, but anyone who's in any doubt over any situation with regards to their council tax support fund and indeed the hardship fund is encouraged to contact our officers who regardless of a report that is quite heavy and will be even heavier if we probably started to include some of the things that Councillor Jarman mentioned. We've got to look and say that it's concise in its format as is. I'll touch on that again in a moment. What I would say is that we don't leave people hanging. We make sure that everyone that is contacted through our channels is dealt with in the appropriate, responsible manner. And I would say that last winter, for instance, we didn't know what was going to happen to the council tax support scheme. So within the budget, we put money in there as a safety net. And don't forget that we would continue to do that sort of thing because we are a caring council. That's across the chamber. Moving on and noting scrutiny the other evening, and indeed members of scrutiny that attended the information session, which I thank them for, was absolutely first class. I think that you dealt with it in the appropriate manner. No, as I said, I know it's a lumpy report, but you did it responsibly, and I thank you for that. And I think that's no more really than we would suggest that you would do, because you show some responsibility in the scrutiny line. So I say thank you for that. What I would say is, with regards to the format of the report, no doubt in the next term of this council, these reports will change quite drastically in readiness for the committee system. And no doubt there will be more information sharing across each committee and throughout the council as you all work together to bring these things forward. The other thing was that Councillor Garrett mentioned about the complicated paper. I think we all recognise that. And I thank him for actually contacting the Section 151 officer to get an insight into some of the information, but also noting that Councillor Blake has put forward that he attended the consultation. I recognised him there, and I welcomed his attendance. We do need a new procedure. There's no two ways about it. With papers like this, we need to adopt a better way of actually not just us getting a grasp, but as indeed has been mentioned, the general public, the residents of the Isle of Wight and businesses need to be able to understand our papers. We don't want them like an NHS prescription. We want them to be understood by the rank and file people of the Isle of Wight. I want to move to the recommendation, if that's okay, which is on page 190. It's recommended that full council adopts the proposed scheme as detailed at Appendix 4, which maintains the current scheme by making 6 small changes detailed in paragraph 32 to better align with national changes and universal credit, and that full council continues the current exceptional hardship policy as detailed at Appendix 5. Have a seconder, please.
Thank you very much for that. What I'm just going to do is if the 151 officer, Councillor Mr. Ward, is there, there's 2 technical questions that I think could be answered by him, if that's. Sorry, I'm not online. Are you there, Chris Ward?
I am,
Could
Chair.
Yeah, sorry, my apologies. Could you answer it's just a couple of technical little bits, which I think will help the council, about the winter payments and the Ukrainian issue, please?
Okay. I think it's best to defer to the experts on the winter payments and the Ukrainian issue, but my understanding is that they will be disregarded in the same way that they have in the past. There were a couple of other technical questions, Chair, that I'm happy to answer that I think have gone unanswered. One was Councillor Mosdell's query about the increase in council tax, and the other one was Councillor Andre's query about the hardship fund.
Yeah, I think it all adds to the debate, and so please answer them briefly if you can.
Yeah, will do. So in terms of I'll take them in the order that they were put. So in terms of the hardship fund, the cost will be the cost. So it is a criteria-based fund. So therefore, if we receive more applications that meet the criteria, they will be funded, and it will manifest itself as a loss of council tax income to the council, and obviously a reduction in our overall funding level. The second question from Councillor Mosdell regarding the change in council tax for next year. All the analysis that has been done from the national budget, all of that suggests that the council tax limit for next year, or the referendum thresholds as they're known, will be 5% for a council such as the Isle of Wight, which relates to a continuation of the adult social care precept of 2% and 3% increase for general purposes. That's exactly as is forecast in our financial planning going forward. So ultimately, we anticipate that an increase in council tax and therefore council tax support will probably increase by around about 5%. Thank you, Chair.
So, thank you very much for that clarity. I think we need to be as open and transparent as we can throughout. And I would like to thank Claire and Erin for the presentations which you have done so far. Very much appreciated. So we come back to the we've read the motion. It's been seconded. All in favour? Yep. Thank you. Those against? 1. And abstentions? No abstentions. Thank you. Thank you very much, members. And so on to the next item, which is the report of the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a report dealing with a couple of vacancies on the independent remuneration panel, and the recommendation which comes through from the Appointments and Employment Committee is that Josephine, Samantha and Stephen Howe be appointed to serve on the independent remuneration panel for a term of 3 years. as I say, this is a recommendation coming through from the Appointments and Employment Committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody want to comment on that at all? Councillor Jordan?
Chair, thank you. What I would like to do is propose this recommendation being part of the process to select the two people concerned. And so in that respect, I will like to recommend that, and the names are written in here, gave me some disquiet, but Josephine Samantha and Stephen Howe be appointed to serve on the independent remuneration panel for a term of 3 years, and we need a second of that, Chair.
Second that. Councillor Adams? Any comments, anybody? No. So we'll move to the vote then. Those in favour? Okay, thank you. Those against? Abstentions? 2 abstentions, 3 abstentions. Okay, thank you. Now then, I've got comfort break written here. So let's take a comfort break for a few minutes. Oh, people are saying no? You know? Okay, so we are gonna take a comfort break for 5 minutes. Thank you. Are we ready, ladies and gentlemen? Councillors, I should say. Here we go, councillors. Motion submitted under part 4A, procedure rule 9. Councillor Ed Blake.
Thank you, Chair. I won't read my motion. I trust that everyone else has it. It is quite lengthy. I just wanted to raise why I've brought this motion forward to this council. Essentially, over the last year, three young men that I grew up around knowing when I was young on the island, this year had taken their own lives. And after, well, actually, it was my cousin that came to me, and he'd lost two. He knew two of them. And he said, "Is there anything you can do as a councillor?" So I said, "Well, yeah, I can look at what the council provides for mental health, what we're doing well, what we can do better." So I spoke to families and friends of people that have been affected, not only by people that lost people, but people that almost were lost. And so got a meeting with Simon Bryant and Sue Cochrane, which was very helpful. And out of it has come this motion. I was very keen for this motion to have a bit of teeth to it and not just be words, because the people that have been, as I say, brought back, I want a better phrase than that, but the people that haven't taken their own lives have said it's a heavy-handed actions that have done that. And sometimes it's, it might just be as simple as, Steve's story, his wife, or his girlfriend, sorry, noticing things like his behaviour and intervening. Another story was someone was sent by his family to go and work in an Australian mine so he could get as a form of rehabilitation because he wouldn't go into rehabilitation. Luckily that worked. So with the motion, I seek to basically get a bit more information into places and awareness into places that it currently isn't. And I think that one of the key things is actually around sort of workplaces and businesses, because people who tend to go down this road get more and more insular, and as a community, as a population, we are more and more insular anyway. We've lost a lot of human contact replaced by social media and things like that. And one of the few places that people have to come out initially is it's places like work and maybe sports clubs, maybe associations. So it's engaging with those places to make sure that as much information is out there as possible, as much training out there as possible, people to recognise signs, so that we can have more success stories like Steve. And Councillor Livy's just come over with a sign that men only are promoting that basically is like an information, looks like a road sign type thing, for people to pay attention to. Things like that are crucial. So that's essentially where this motion's come from, and I hope that the action that's called for is carried out by this council.
Thank you for that. So I'm looking for a seconder on this. In that way, Councillor Mosdale. Would you like to speak?
I'll reserve the right.
Can I just clarify this, just briefly, because paragraph 2 is talking about increased funding and support from the local authority. So are you advocating that this authority spends more money in this particular, or are you advocating that this council works to bring in more money in the? wider context, because each one of those has two different
Of course,
routes.
thank you for that, Chair. So I'm advocating that this council looks for more funding. Let's get this right. Essentially, the second one for the word of what you just said. Yeah, obviously we can't commit. We can't commit to committing money to it at this council tonight. But what we can do is say that we will look to do that in the future. You know, this council will look to secure funding from wherever it can, outside sources, whether to help do this. And you know, Councillor Andre came to me and said that there's what she spoke about earlier in the meeting about, you know, opening up, making sure that community associations, etc., and groups like Men Only are aware of funding that can be obtained.
Thank you very much for that. That clarifies the position of the motion. So we can move forward with that. Would anybody like to speak? Councillor Lilly?
Firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Blake for bringing this forward. He, in his ward, in Ventnor and in the area of Ryde, has in fact in the last 12 months had a very high percentage of men of all ages, but also young men. And I am currently supporting a family that probably lost the life of the youngest man on the island recently. This brings incredible grief, not only for families, but for whole communities. And very poignantly, yesterday, it was International Men's Day. Men are nearly 80% of these deaths on the island. It's nearly 90%, because men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women, and 4 times less likely to seek help. And we have the evidence of personal experience of that. So it is an important issue that we need to take on board of that. And yesterday, I put up the first sign with Men Only in a wood in my ward where there has in the last 12 months been 3 deaths. And it's a helpline of that. And I know with the work of Councillor Blake, it's also gone into 19 football clubs and rugby clubs on the island. And if any of the members are interested in their wards or have particular areas, those available, and Men Only, who've done pioneering work on this area. When I first became a councillor, the issue of men and mental health and suicide was not discussed, but it has been discussed over the years. And I know Councillor Brodie and myself have put forward motions about bringing this issue more forward. So it is absolutely good that you, Ed, are now bringing this forward. I would like to actually say, when we talk about funding, that in recent reports, mental health services on the island across the UK are in crisis. And one of the things is getting joined up links between the ICB through primary care, through the new mental health trust, and that's a big change for us on the island. We have a new Hampshire mental health, community mental health trust that's only just thing. It was called, and we need to actually get all the parties, and I hope that Isle of Wight Council takes a lead to actually talk about this funding issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. Apologies. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. It seems like many years ago, I was sitting over there and I spoke about the mental health of veterans and how some of them were suicidal and wouldn't go out and they were frightened and so on and so forth. Well, I'm pleased to say that the various military charities have got a grip of that, and that the vulnerability, shall I say, of the veterans group has diminished. And that's because the charities put resources into helping those people. So I think Councillor Blake is absolutely right. Resources will and do help. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Luciani.
Well done. I just want to say it's a very good motion. I should be supporting it, but any life lost to suicide is a tragedy. So I've had 2 women in my family, very young women in my family, commit suicide, and this motion talks about what we need to do for everybody. So I just wanted to illustrate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luciani. I apologise for, I always get your name wrong. I'm so sorry about that. It's only been at 5 years, hasn't it? So maybe in another 5 years I might get it right. My apologies there. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to Councillor Blake for bringing this motion, which I fully support, and also thank you to other councillor colleagues who have worked very hard on these issues over the years. One thing I particularly strikes me about this motion in particular, 2 uses of particular there, sorry for repetition, I like that it talks about promoting training for everyone around mental health and suicide, because we're all aware that this is a big issue. I think we've all got much better over the years in discussing it, but we're not always very good at going and doing the training. I mean, having training about how to speak to somebody who is at that crisis point in their life where they might take their life is so vital, and it's something that we all could do and should do. And I particularly thank Councillor Blake for including that in his motion. Thank you.
Jarman, Councillor Jarman.
Yes, I'll also join in congratulating and thanking Councillor Blake for bringing this forward. I want to build on what Councillor Lilly said, because I think it's a very important point. I do not currently have great clarity about how suicide prevention is integrated with the new regime on the island for mental health. Somebody else may, I don't. I did try and look it up actually a little bit before the meeting, and I drew a complete blank. And I know that Councillor Lilly is our mental health champion, so I'm hoping that he might be very much on the ball with this. But I think it would help for all of us to be updated on this. So whilst I'll support this motion this evening wholeheartedly, I think it would be helpful to have part of that education process for members to actually explain what the mechanism is and how we can proactively, which is what the motion calls for, connect in and integrate with that new service.
Thank you very much for that. Have we got anybody again? Anybody else? Councillor Andre.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's only right and proper as the Cabinet Member for Public Health that I come into this space. And I am also very grateful to Councillor Blake for raising this sensitive issue, which I know many of us here will have personal experience of, sadly. It's about having as broad a base of help as we possibly can, but we know that whatever we do, it's not going to be enough. So the fact that he's asking us to advocate for increased funding through other sources is particularly welcome. The point about training is one very well made. I myself have done the Zero Suicide Alliance training, and I would thoroughly recommend it to anybody that hasn't done it. And obviously, as councillors, we are community leaders, and I myself have actually had somebody come to me that was actually contemplating, and actually knowing how to handle a situation like that, although every situation is obviously different, is absolutely invaluable. So the training is really essential. And it is important that we collaborate with local businesses. It's been highlighted that we now have a new trust that has taken over mental health, and I am working closely with them. I've listened to Councillor Jarman's query, and that's something that I will certainly be taking up, because I think it's really important here. This is about prevention. If it gets to the point of somebody by suicide because it's not been recognised, then we are failing. We have to accept that we are failing in that space. I think it's also important that we do recognise the work that's already being done, and Councillor Ward mentioned about veterans, and I know there is Op Fortitude, Veteran Aware and veteran outreach support that are being very successful in helping veterans with their specific needs. So I am taking on board what is being said tonight. I am grateful for the comments and for what's being brought forward. And we do need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got one more. Councillor Blake.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I was fully support this motion. It's been brought forward incredibly well worded. It's obviously quite personal to Councillor Baker, as you heard from his initial summary. But I think we've all experienced families or friends or relatives that have been in a similar position. I mean, Councillor Lilly talks with great knowledge and great interest and care about this interest. And we have discussed this as the council before. I think what's different about this motion is it talks a lot about training. It talks a lot about really going out and seeking external funding. It also talks about, you know, getting into sports clubs and things like that, and getting into businesses, which we perhaps haven't gone down that avenue before. People have said, you know, examples here of people saying, you know, people at a young age have taken their own lives. I think there's also got the element of education in schools about it. I think we need to go deeper, or go further, and perhaps sort of start doing some school education as well to prevent people having those thoughts at an early age. So I think if we're going to expand a little bit from the businesses and sports clubs and the training in general, I think we need to include education facilities in that as well, if we can, going forward. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I'm just mindful that we're going around quite a lot. Have you got something different to add to this?
I've got something quite different. It's a really worthwhile motion, and raising awareness on mental health issues and recognising mental health issues is so important. And we have moved a long way in the last 10 years or so in that, particularly when you go to see a GP, because GPs now have some recognition of mental health when it's staring them in the face. 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. And it's all very well for us to sit here in sympathy with the tragedy of mental health, especially when it manifests in suicide. But, and I speak from personal experience, that it's very easy to dismiss erratic, challenging, or divergent behaviour as and not recognise it as symptoms of mental health. So as counsellors, when we're dealing with people that we might find challenging or we don't understand, then it's perhaps worth looking behind the scenes, because there is an opportunity maybe to recognise some psychotic problem. And I'm doing exactly the same with a persistent nuisance person who is labelled as a nuisance in my area. I'm having conversations with the psychiatrist over it.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor. So just before I go back to Councillor Blake, just wanted to just add a couple of things really. I mean, we obviously have the health and policy scrutiny, who should be, of course, picking this up and driving this forward. And so if I can just refer that back to them as well to make sure that this is kept on the agenda moving forward. Remembering that, of course, the opportunity to support you is actually in the fact that we may well be having a new public health direction moving forward. And there's an opportunity there for perhaps some additional support and change within the organisation from that. And finally to say, you know, the nights are drawing in. It is dark out there. People feel lonely. and the winter can have all kinds of impact on people's lives. Many of us are touched ourselves by mental health issues and family issues. And so it is about that awareness, but more importantly, about what we do, not just what we talk about, the things that we actually do as individuals and collectively. And these are the things that we need to focus on, the actions. So the motion is really welcomed. And now it's about putting the meat onto the bone to make sure that there are some actions that move forward from there. Councillor Blake, I'll come back to you and then move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of statistics just to sort of back up where I've tried to come from. 46% of men wouldn't tell their employer if they were suffering from mental health due to either being embarrassed or ashamed of that. So increasing the conversation and making people aware that it's not something to be embarrassed about. It's something that begins from talking about it. That's the first step on the road to recovery is talking about it. And I've seen that firsthand through people in sports clubs that I'm a member of, and through through Men Only. As a football club, we've started a couple of walks, like walk and talks, I think they call them, and people totally out of the blue have just turned up and just started talking, and I've seen firsthand how that can be just transformational for those people, and it raises the awareness within yourself of what other people might be going through without speaking about that. So just a note from Councillor Dorr, actually, going along with what Ian Ward said, there are obviously a big part of of mental health is normally associated with veterans, and there are some 3 things he'd like to sort of point people towards for veterans. It's the veteran outreach support, NHS Aware, which runs through surgeries and things like that, and Operation Courage. And also a lot of people have been getting in contact with me since the press have run the fact that this motion is coming up. And one of the things came out of that is that giveusashout.org run a 24/7 text service that is very useful, apparently. So but yeah, so thank you for your consideration tonight. And I say it's just about getting the conversation going as much as possible. And I think as a council, we have the right to, well, we have the responsibility to do that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blake. Can we move to the vote on this? Those in support and favour? And that is unanimous. So we now move on to Councillor Price's motion.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chair, could I raise a point of order very quickly? At the beginning of the meeting, when declarations of interest were asked for, quite a lot of us indicated to say involved in a small business. I'm not quite sure how that was resolved. Are we effectively, those of us who are in that position, effectively being given a dispensation to be part of this debate? Or given that that is almost inevitably a pecuniary interest, is this the point at which we should leave the chamber?
Thank you for that. I'll just check an officer on this one.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, the question of whether or not interest exists a matter for each member to determine. I think the point I would say that when there are so many people affected by running businesses and so forth, a specific interest, in my view, would be too remote to have to declare. Obviously, if a particular business is impacted in any item of business, then that's another matter. But I think the generality, my view, my advice would be it would be too remote. But as was said earlier in the meeting, members have felt a need to, some members need to over declare, in my words, in terms of the interest of openness and transparency. Thank you.
So basically, we can proceed with the discussion. If you feel that you need to leave, then that is entirely your decision. And Councillor Brodie, you would like to add?
And I just like to ask for clarification that this council clearly is unrepresentative of the Isle of Wight population.
Yes.
The vast majority do not run small businesses.
Yeah.
And therefore, many of them may actually think, I'm not saying, you know, it depends whether they're a Daily Mail reader like Councillor Mosdell, really, you know, may actually think that the national insurance changes to address the black hole in the national economy that the new government found at the beginning of July is actually a good thing. So therefore, I would argue very strongly that all those self-employed small business owners who are members of this council do have a conflict of interest to participate in this discussion, particularly since it's against the vast majority of Ireland residents. Thank you.
Right, well.
Chair, can I respond to that, please? Because there is another view on that, please.
Briefly, because
So
I'm gonna have to
very
take some
briefly,
votes.
so my understanding is we will be entering into a debate that will discuss this motion, but we as a full council can't make any financial decisions. They are made by Cabinet. So we are not recommending any financial recommendations here. We are having a debate that there hopefully is a balance within the chamber on that debate, but actually there will be no financial implications from this motion, because those financial, anything that we're saying we're going to change parking fees or something like that, would have to go as a budget process in February or as part of Cabinet, not to be part of this debate this evening. This is a very broad debate we are having this evening.
Yeah, thank you. Just give me 1 second in this matter. Okay, so Councillor Brodie, thank you very much for that. If you want to leave and feel it's appropriate to leave, then please leave. I suspect that if I was to say that everybody had a pecuniary interest, I would have to leave, and so would probably most other people, by the sounds of it. I think if we keep the discussion in the broad base, Councillor Price, then that would be appropriate, I think. So, but I do thank you for raising that. So, Councillor Price, sorry, I've lost where we are now. His motion. We'll take questions. No, sorry, Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I don't wish to be controversial with this in any way, and I won't be reading my motion out because I'm sure everyone's took the time to read it. But there's a few things that I do want to say. First of all, can I make it clear that I'm not seeking for any help for my own business or any business I might be involved in. I'm both employed and self-employed, and I've been involved in our family business since 1987 myself. And as such, feel that I have a good understanding of what businesses have faced, what they face at present, and what they may face in the future. The biggest employers on the island are small businesses, whether retail, service, agricultural, manufacturing, or tourism, etc. They all play a vital role in our economy. The island has unique challenges, far different than anywhere else. We also now have the unique situation of having two MPs who are politically opposed, but very much willing to work together, who can engage with the government along with the council. My motion calls on the Isle of Wight Council to work with our MPs to find ways to support our businesses, and specifically our small businesses. Help can come in many forms, and this could, for example, be government subsidies, government loans, grants, and other financial packages. New solutions for cross-solent travel, again, in either subsidies or specific regulations, perhaps resurrecting the future high street funding, government-supported parking schemes for town centres in conjunction with local authorities and town and parish councils. The island's economy depends on small businesses as much as it does anything else. The mass departure of national retailers from our towns has been catastrophic on the retail sector. COVID wiped out many businesses and financially damaged many others. Businesses are now potentially looking at some of the most difficult times to come after the announcement of the rise in employers' national insurance contributions, the reduction in business rate support, and another rise in the minimum wage, of course. Retail has begun to recover, and particularly well in Newport. However, this is in many ways down to local people putting their necks on the line to open, expand, or continue to operate their own businesses, something that takes a lot of guts to do. Newport's retail had a boost last year with Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council's 1 hour free parking trial, which was supported by the Isle of Wight Council and other funding streams. But this sadly did not get any further funding from the Isle of Wight Council, so could not continue. Why is this motion important? We talk about poverty, for instance, all the time, and we rarely look at ways that can actually, in real terms, prevent it. Keeping our small businesses open and trading keeps our towns and villages alive. It keeps people working. It keeps local areas vibrant and provides ways and means to socialise. If small businesses do well, then everyone benefits, especially the government and the council. This motion essentially calls on the council to ensure, via our MPs, that we are always at the very top of the list when and if future funding opportunities and schemes arise. Please, members, I hope you will support the spirit of this motion and vote for this motion. Thank you.
And I look for a seconder. Councillor Outlaw.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to say, just add to that, I think Matt makes Councillor Price makes the point that this is meant to be a motion which one would hope that all members would be able to support. But given the earlier comment from Councillor Brodie, I think it's important to recognise the fact that small businesses can be many, many things. They're not necessarily privately owned companies or shops where people are making lots of money. They can struggle. I manage a small manufacturing company which faces challenges from direct copies of our equipment made in China going into the same markets as we try and sell in. It's very, very challenging. And we recognise every single cost that comes into the business is a challenge for the whole company and can affect our ability to employ people in the local area. So when we were, as I always do, coming up to the budget, I was looking forward to hearing what was going to be said. And what we were told before the budget, it was going to be about growth, growth, growth. In reality, it turned out that the only growth was in the tax burden on businesses. And to not recognise the fact that those changes will potentially affect people, working people who are more often than not at the lowest end of the income stream would be wrong. So it was not good, but it is what it is. We all rely on the public services, and we all recognise that they need as much support as possible. But let's be clear: the budget was not about growth, and I think coming back to the motion, we need to recognise that it's appropriate that the council does everything they can for local businesses. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And of course, you were using your own example to describe the wider context of what was occurring. Apologies. Councillor Brodie, I think we got there first.
Thank you, Chair. For many years, it was my duty when Labour were ever in government to defend them in this chamber. That's not something I'm going to do, despite my remarks earlier on. I would advise members of the council not to believe everything they read in the Daily Mail or the Daily Express, as is evidenced by the early remarks about council tax increases. Council tax is unlikely to be allowed to go above more than 5%, despite what the Mail might say. I left the Labour Party some years ago, and I'm not going to defend them. I'm no supporter of what they've been doing since July. I absolutely oppose their failure to change the child tax credit bit, the tax credit business, the winter fuel business, and I have major concerns about these national insurance changes, which are in fact going to affect a small charity that I'm the treasurer of, and together, you know, which is a bit of a worry. I congratulate Matt Price on a very good speech. It's the first time Matt's ever proposed a motion in the 12 years he's been in this chamber, and I congratulate him as my councillor as well. It was as long as all of my previous 50 motions, to be frank, because I'm known for my brevity in motions, but it was a good contribution. And I support entirely his intention, which is to ensure we're always at the top of the list. And Councillor Oliver, I may surprise you, I'm actually going to vote for this motion. I do understand how small businesses work. Quite often it's just a couple of people running a shop or something like that. I do understand how that works. And I do have major concerns about the Chancellor of the Exchequer's budget. I voted Labour, as I've voted throughout my adult life, on July the 4th, mainly because I wanted to support Richard Quigley. Unfortunately, he's very rarely able to be here, and he's the only official Labour voice in this chamber. Hopefully that'll change after I've left in May. But I am still a socialist at the end of the day. But that doesn't mean to say that I can't support small businesses. I will support your motion, Councillor Price, and thank you for bringing it.
Thank you. We have Councillor Mosdale next.
Thank you. Mine's sort of to raise awareness of a point that I made to the Section 151 officer the other day, and he agreed with me that this does have an effect to this council. So all the independent care homes on the island are small businesses. They are now in a position that their wage bill will be increased because they will have their cost will increase because their national insurance, their employers' contribution will increase. But they are also in a situation now that because of the increase in the minimum wage, they will have to increase their other salaries to be proportionate, because you will have somebody who is qualified who suddenly will actually be earning the same as somebody who is on the minimum wage. Councillor Ward said at the time that they hadn't put that calculation into it when we put up, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care will be shaking, nodding their head, that actually every year we have a meeting with the small providers, well, the home providers, and go into how their costs will have increased. And we have to take that into account because we have to place our elderly residents within the care homes and pay the proper going rate. So this does have an effect to the council, which the Section 151 officer has taken into account. And we do have to support those small businesses because it's essential that we support the care sector on the island. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ward next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've really made a general point about the island. I know we've been discussing small businesses and what have you, but I'd like to take an overview. I would like to support the spirit of Councillor Price's motion. Decades ago, the island had a huge tourism industry. Over the last few decades, that industry has dwindled to a shadow of its former self. However, that reduction, that gap in tourism, has not been replaced with an alternative. Sorry, we do need considerable help to fill that gap. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think many of my colleagues and the motion by Councillor Price has eloquently raised some of the knock-on effects. I think one of the things the Labour government clearly stated that the working people were not going to be taxed. What they haven't actually realised, and particularly on the Isle of Wight, is that a lot of people work for small organisations. They might be a small business, they might be a charity, There might be a parish and town council who are not exempted like the Isle of Wight Council. And I think Councillor Modsell's point about the fact the knock-on effect of the price of a bed that we need as a council to actually buy into could be seriously affected. And I think that we do need to work with our MPs, as Councillor Thing, to actually say, as an island, we will be hit very hard because a lot of working people are doing 2 or 3 jobs at the low end, and are actually, those small jobs are likely to be the ones that will be cut by employers. And we need to be getting advice and support out to our population, what is going to entail. Wight Town Council recently has funded workers at the library to help people with benefits and side, and we need to be getting information out to people, because ordinary working people who work for small businesses are extremely worried what is going to happen to them. And many of them who might have voted Labour, like Councillor Brodie did, are actually really wondering why they did now at the moment. It has had a real traumatic effect on our population.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Now, we have quite a list of people wanting to speak, just so that we're just aware. Yeah. So Councillor Stewart next.
Councillors, many of you know that I had a career supporting innovation SMEs within government, and I fully support this motion. It makes it very clear where the majority of the employment on this island comes from, small businesses, and we have to support that. It is also true that the government has had an effect, but other people have spoken about that, so I'm going to say no more at all. My committee, the Neighbourhood and Regeneration, has been looking at this area, and we have a task and finish group which we are considering at the moment on how to improve the environment. And I think that's what we have to look at as well. How to improve the environment for small businesses on the island. And the 3 key areas around their finances, around their skills, both the skills of the people running those companies and the skills of the people who actually work within them, and the sort of administration, the organisation, the structures of those businesses. And so what I would say is that we also need to look at how we can create a culture of support. I will leave that for you to consider how you might be able to help with that into the future. And I would like to specifically thank my committee and the councillors on that committee for helping push this forward so well.
So I'm going to ask an obvious question now. We're getting a lot of people saying very similar things, all supportive, all very welcome comments. If we're going to continue with the debate, we need to be succinct, please, or we move to the vote on this. Not hearing anybody saying they want to go to the vote at this point. And a couple of, so we will carry on for the time being as there's. Okay. Councillor Jarman.
I'll be succinct. I'll also speak broadly. I think what we've got here is a move which is of potentially substantial detriment to our island. It's a poorly thought out measure and a knee-jerk reaction from the new government. And in terms of the impact on the island, I don't think it could be broader. It's effectively a tax on businesses. It's a tax on jobs and hence all of our residents. It's a tax on this council as an employer. It's a tax on our contracted agencies, as Councillor Modsell has spoken, and a tax on our suppliers. And importantly, it's a tax on apprentices. So I cannot think there are very many people who are not affected by this to their detriment and to our detriment. So all well-being to you, Councillor Price, for bringing this. I will wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bacon. Well, that's not like you.
Councillor Blake.
Well, it does say Bacon here, not Blake, but Councillor Blake.
Second time that Councillor Bacon's been mistaken for someone else tonight. Essentially the bit I'd like to raise awareness of is the last paragraph for the resolution. This council, is only one of the governing bodies that oversee businesses. For instance, my business is overseen by 12 different governing bodies, and they may all make little decisions they think that we can take on as a business, but if 12 of them are making them, it becomes a huge load. So just this council needs to put itself in front of the mirror again and just make sure that every decision it makes is in the interest of small businesses, particularly in light of the national picture, whether that be something as simple as, is it using small businesses when it's making decisions, or buying things in, what roads are being closed around a certain area, for instance. We need to look at what this council is doing and the effects that has on small businesses in every form of its output.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. This is a really difficult issue to talk about because it is quite so complex. There's very many different moving parts here. Some things are going up, some things are going down. We may, with retail, with any sort of discretionary spend, really, people may have more money in their pockets. We don't know how that's going to affect sales, for instance, to compensate maybe for more costs. But having said that, there was a meeting last week at the Isle of Wight College with the Bank of England, and they were doing some forecasting, and this discussion did come up. And at the moment, no one really knows what's going to happen. There's so many moving parts here. The Federation of Small Businesses and the Chambers of Commerce nationally had done a lot of lobbying on this pre-budget. In fact, the FSB were able to lobby, because they have an office right in at Westminster. They were able to lobby to enable the employer's allowance, which is what your credits basically against your national insurance bill, from £5,000 to £10,000. Now, I did some work before I saw Councillor Price's his motion come forward. I did some work myself to understand what it would be, this would mean to the island. We have a higher than average micro business landscape. So about 3,500 businesses employ 5 or less people. So at the minute, we don't know what that equation is going to be like with the increase in the employer's allowance, but of course the increase in the national living wage as well. So there's lots of many different pieces. But coming back to the work at the council, we have our economic development board, where we have virtually all the business sectors on the island well represented, as well as the lobbying group side that I've mentioned earlier. And I think that sounding board really enables us to get a real sort of litmus test of what's going on the island, and we're able to then react as necessary. We can't change the policy, but we can listen and we can lobby. So lobbying has been done, is going on. We don't know what the picture is going to be like, but just rest assured that me personally, I am very interested in this space and keeping a watching brief on it.
Thank you. Still have a few to go. Councillor Vanessa Churchman.
I support obviously the motion through and through. If you don't make money, you can't spend it. And if you shut down small business to the extent they go out of existence, who's going to supply the employment? Where is the money going to come from? Everything disappears. 60% of the UK, as far as I know, is comprised of SMEs. And certainly the Isle of Wight Chamber of Commerce, I think, is either the first or second largest in the country. We have over 3,000 members. It really is a credit to the island that we do so well with our small businesses. I can't believe what's going on, but the point is we've got to keep focusing on keeping these businesses open, because we have employment problems now. just think about how this is going to affect all the school leavers coming up in the next 2 years. Where on earth are they going to get jobs? And that to me, and why should they bother to do any sort of school training when the possibility is they won't have anywhere where they can use it? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lever, I've got next.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just make a suggestion that everybody up to this point has agreed and is supporting the motion? Unless somebody's disagreeing or proposing an amendment, can we just go to the vote, please?
We've got a seconder for that this time. So you would like to speak, but I've got a seconded motion, so I have to ask, do people want to go to the vote? Can you show your hands, please, if that's the case? Those who don't want to go to the vote? I'm afraid we're going to go to the vote because that's so my apologies, Dave. Well, I'm sorry, but that's the procedural rule. The procedural rule is that if somebody makes a motion to go to the vote, I have to follow that, Dave, and I'm sorry, that's the right and proper way.
Chair, it was if nobody has an amendment or a point that disagrees with the motion, though. So I don't know what councillor.
Well, I'm afraid we've actually voted on it now. We've actually taken that motion, and so we are going to the vote. So yeah, okay. So those in favour of supporting this motion, please. Yeah, in favour. Okay. Councillor Adams? No. I'm sorry, but he is correct in that. I put my hands up and say I've made a mistake in that. That was what the motion was, and I think you do have the right to make a comment. So,
in general, I am in agreement with it, but I take exception with some parts in it. And a few years ago, just before I stood to become a councillor, I heard a rumour that second homeowners were being paid 10 grand, £10,000. Now, I found that a strange statement. So I put a freedom of information request into the council, and it transpired that holiday lets, people that had second homeowners that had their houses registered as holiday lets, were claiming that payment, and they got that payment. Now, what concerned me with that is that was in the COVID, yeah, it was. But what concerned me, Ian, was my concern was they have these holiday lets registered as small businesses. They don't pay any council tax. And what they do, there's a 144 day or 146 day rule, and this isn't monitored that closely. And then they claim if they don't earn £12,000 a year, they claim small business rate relief. So they pay no business rates either. Now, I think this council has a responsibility. The payments topped up from the council to just under £10 million to these so-called small businesses. Now, I believe the council has a duty to collect this money, and I believe a lot of these claims are fraudulent. And when you get a village like Seaview, we have 85% second homes. And we have this not just on the island, it's across the country, it's nationwide. But I believe we need to close these loopholes. So I believe the comment in there where Matt put about the HMRC clamping down on some of these things, I believe the HMRC have a right to do that and try and check some of these things a bit more stringent. That's my concern.
thank you very much. I'm sorry that it's been a little bit messy, this particular section.
But I didn't want to interrupt Councillor Adams because I was interested to hear what his point was. But what procedural motions, there is only a motion to move to the vote. It does not allow for subject to somebody else being able to speak against, etc., etc. Am I right, monitoring officer? The procedural motion is to move to the vote. You can't qualify that with subsequent issues. So therefore, you were actually right, Chair. And I just wanted, since I criticised you earlier, I thought I'd compliment you this time. Thank you.
We all make mistakes, each and every one of us. And I was on slightly dodgy ground there, and I'm sorry if I got that wrong. So we're now in a position where we can go right of reply. And we've had a move to the vote. So we've had a move to the vote, so we have to go to that vote. Monitoring officer, you need to tell me. Sorry.
Was the proposer of the motion, obviously, Councillor Price has a right to sum up prior to going to the vote, unless he waives that right.
Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate the support and interesting to hear the comments. Just want to make one comment really, which is, you know, while there's many of us here that maybe have experience from being in business or previously being in business or operating within a managerial role in a business. So, you know, in one respect, you could say that there's maybe a biased attitude towards this here this evening, which I appreciate that being said, but also all of the thousands and thousands of people that work in those small businesses could be adversely affected in the coming months and years. So I think this just my motion is simply to ask the Isle of Wight Council to get us to the top of the list whenever any government help comes available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we can go to the vote. I'm assured that that was right. So those in favour of the motion. And that looks unanimous. Oh, sorry. Abstentions? 2 abstentions. I just check, do we have anybody against? No. So 3 abstentions. Okay. Have you got that? Are you clear? I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. Right, so members' questions, and we have a question from Councillor, written question from Councillor Brodie. Would you like to present your question?
Yes, I certainly would, Chair. And because we had to submit any questions for this council before last week's cabinet, it was a little presumptive in terms of the Director of Public Health. So I'm going to insert a word into my question, the word perhaps. The council appointed its own statutory Director of Children's Services earlier this year. The cabinet also agreed at last week's meeting to perhaps appoint the council's own statutory Director of Public Health. Will the leader and his cabinet now consider the council appointing its own statutory Director of Finance and Section 151 officer? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Chair. So the Cabinet and myself are not presently considering any changes to the ongoing partnership arrangement with Portsmouth for provision of a shared Section 151 officer. At this stage of this year's budget process, it would be detrimental to the stability of this council and the financial and legal requirements to set a lawful budget. That said, the appointment of a Section 151 officer is not an executive decision of Cabinet or the leader, but rather a full council decision following any due process as laid out by the Constitution. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, could I come back with a supplementary, please? I think the last part of what you said, Councillor John, isn't absolutely right. I suspect the Cabinet would have to make the decision to do it. The actual appointment has to be confirmed by full council, as is the case with the monitoring officer and the chief executive and 1 or 2 other officers, I believe. The reason I raise it, and I wouldn't want you to change this officer at this time in the budget cycle, you know, I'm not insane. What I would say is that maybe there's an opportunity just ahead of the committee system to consider doing this. The reason I want to do that is because it has become apparent to me, the longer this administration continues, that the prime concern of Isle of Wight councillors, the delivery of social housing, is not going to happen so long as we have a Director of Finance who isn't committed to the Isle of Wight. Earlier on, we saw the Director of Finance with a side of one of the many authorities he works for, Gosford Borough Council, behind him. It is time for us to have officers committed to the Isle of Wight. Mr. Whitaker is committed to the Isle of Wight. I don't know what the eventual decision will be on public health, but I do think that maybe you should be considering it before we move into the committee system. That happens to be just before an election. But would you consider that perhaps at the Cabinet, I presume that you'll have in March? Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Look, currently we're not planning to look at that. I accept that as we move into a committee system next year, there could be some realignment of roles in any event. The Section 151 of the statutory post, as we know, I think let's let the committee system come into being and let the committee system deal with the structure of this council when it gets here in May. That would be, I think, our Cabinet's view. I haven't spoken with our Cabinet, but I think that would be their view.
Thank you very much for your response. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to say how great you look this evening, your beautiful chains there and your regalia. But regalia is my question to you. You will recall recently at the remembrance service before we went in on the 10th, we spoke about Newport's chains, and you asked me to write to you, which I duly did, and I have previously written to the council, and many years ago also lobbied the Isle of Wight Council for Newport to be able to have its chains. I mean, maybe you might call them their spiritual chains or their rightful chains. These are chains of office that were previously for Newport Borough Council, and when, of course, it all changed, the changes, they are now sitting in the safe or the vaults of the Isle of Wight Council. So I understand. So we have no chains. So we've had many chairs of the council who have nothing to represent themselves as the county town. Now, I'm not too worried, but just saying, would you be able to be lobby on our behalf to get our chains, and we will look after them, I promise you.
Thank you for your question. The answer is yes, we can have a discussion and a debate about who those chains. We hear of artifacts being returned all over the world from different things. So I'm sure that there can be a quite open and frank discussion with officers and in this chamber, if necessary, about who gets what chains and cloaks, if there are any cloaks. I don't think there are any cloaks, but anyway. No, I don't know. Is there a crown as well? I'm not quite sure. But yes, but seriously, no, seriously, the answer is I will speak with the chief executive and the cabinet can have a discussion with that at some point. Why not?
Jeff, as you know, Jeff.
Very much, everybody. Next question. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, and I'll keep it brief because I'm aware people want to go home, and chains might have been a nice finishing point for this evening. I had a question that I'm sorry I failed to ask earlier because I got a bit confused about when we could and couldn't ask them, and it was for Councillor Stevens, and I'm aware he's now gone, so perhaps I could ask my question and have a written answer. So my question is, when we put out consultations, and I'm referring specifically to the consultation on council tax support, do we check what answers we're publishing? Because there is a response to this report on page 9, Appendix 1, item 7A, number 19, which I would say is extremely discriminatory, and possibly even verging on racist. So I'm not going to read it out. People can read it for themselves, but I'm concerned to see that that's being published, and I'd just like to have some clarification on the procedure around that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yes, it does need to have a written response at this point to the comments that you particularly made. Thank you. And on from Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. Since the beginning of 2024, members, officers and IT staff have been looking for the email that Councillor Jordan, as leader of the council, claimed to have sent to statutory officers regarding the 2024-25 budget planning process, containing the direction to finance officers to provide any councillor with the information they ask for. Multiple follow-up requests, FOIs, appeals have only resulted in the circulation of a heavily redacted document, which the monitoring officer has confirmed does not contain the explicit direction claimed by Councillor Jordan. An inordinate amount of officer time and IT resources have been poured into this fairy tale chase. Will Councillor Jordan finally admit that there is no such email from him containing the direction he claimed, and now renew the direction in respect to the present 25-26 budget planning process? Thank you.
Will absolutely not do that, Councillor Jarman. And the cost and the time of officers has been directly at your door for continuing to ask for this information. That exists. I sent it to officers. You've had a copy. It's redacted. End of story.
I've not had a copy.
Well, it exists.
Nice and calm. We can ask our questions in a good way. Be kind to each other. Next question is from Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair. For many years, I have raised the issue about PTEC and the council's 1 million investment into tidal power, and have asked questions about was that a sound investment, and were we going to basically lose our money? A recent decision regarding PTAC, which I think was a sensible decision by the planning committee, and now puts that very clearly at risk. My question is, Leader, is it time to admit in our accounts that we've made an actual loss of £1 million, and I would think subsequent other costs that have actually been to keep this fantasy going? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have we got a response there?
Thank you. My understanding is it's an outstanding loan. The decision to, if I recall correctly, this goes back to 2013, in August 2013, when we invested some money to acquire licenses. I believe that the money invested was for licenses. I believe that the previous administration also invested some money. That may be the £1 million that you're referring to. My understanding is that's an outstanding loan, and we have yet to have information about how safe and secure that is and what's happening. I don't have to hand, Councillor Lilly, the information on whether that investment that the previous administration made was to renew licenses. I suspect it is. From memory, there was a time limit on the, forgive me if I get this wrong, from memory, the licenses were time stamped. But somehow in the back of my mind, it was 5 years, but that could make sense. 2013 to 2018, previous administration could have renewed for 5 years in 2018.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we've got time to do that if you briefly.
Is it possible that the leader, that you could come back with an answer? If it is a loan, are we going to issue proceedings to ask for that loan to be repaid?
I'll certainly get an answer on that and circulate it, Councillor Lilly.
Thank you very much for those questions. One final question I can see, Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Chair. I will be as brief as possible. My question's for Councillor Jordan, and it's this, that, well, first of all, just a very brief background. You recently declared that housing is your #1 priority, and that you, by an executive decision, will be disposing of 23, I think it was, council-owned sites for development. So my question is, will it be ensured that the disposal of the sites will be to registered providers or housing associations, and that the overwhelming majority of the housing will be social housing for rent by island residents on the housing register? And will the details of the housing mix be disclosed in advance of disposal to corporate scrutiny?
So if executive decision you mean by cabinet, yes, not executive decision by me. It's 20 sites, 2 10s, a list of 10 sites that we have already released for marketing, and 10 sites that we're preparing to be marketed. I can't give you those guarantees since they are going out to the open market, and we will be seeking best value on those sites. I can't therefore say what the successful bidder for those sites will be proposing or planning to bring forward on those sites, but that as an authority, if they are site disposal rather than a development disposal or a development in partnership, we are relying on what the planning application details that comes forward.
Very late and
I can be very brief. It was just in relation to that question in terms of best value and how that's determined. I wonder if we could have some clarity as to exactly what might be within the ambit of that, because I think the point that Councillor Spink is making, I would absolutely agree with, is that the cost to the council in terms of providing housing is something that could go to that determination, the calculation of best value. So I just wondered if that's something we could perhaps have a bit of clarity on. Thank you.
On best value?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So not purely a monetary value, but in terms of potentially the social impact, the way that we could look at that more broadly, I think would certainly be helpful.
In fact, a site in Councillor Spink's own ward, I believe, at Yarmouth School, best value was not the monetary value. It was to do with the community benefits of the offer of the developer. So best value is just not monetary value alone, Councillor Drew. Yes.
Thank you very much. And that there are no more questions. This is our last meeting before Christmas. So I'd like to wish you all a very happy Christmas. And we'll be meeting again in January. Take care and thank you.